What up? And welcome to another episode of From the Script to the Screen. The My Hero edition, going over season 6, episode 22 just dropped, covering chapters 3, 16, 17, 18, and jumping into 319, jumping into a new volume 33. As you guys saw how the episode ended, you kind of get an idea of what's going on. Disclaimer, as always, if you haven't finished the episode, make sure you do, so that you're not spoiled by anything that we discuss. And so you guys saw how last week's episode ended. We see that Deku was able to beat Lady Nagant, and with that, he was able to get a little bit of information. We know that Nagant was a previous hero, so she kind of had some resentment and still felt like she had some good, I would say, left in her, and decided to give Deku some information to help them out, which is how the episode starts off, with them investigating this mansion that they were supposed to take Deku to in the woods. And through some discussion, something that was very important for me to note to you guys was that we see that Deku has kind of become the new obsession for All For One. More than just the actual quirk itself, but he wants to make Deku himself suffer. He feels like he knows that he's kind of similar to how All Might was, and wants to take the burden upon himself to kind of resolve the situation at hand. He feels like he's the only one that could actually beat All For One, so he kind of just feels like the pressure will get to him, and decides to make it more of a point to Deku to let him know that he'll do anything to make him suffer. And we see more examples of just how much other heroes are also suffering with everything going on. We learned through discussion of the other heroes and the meeting that they're having that some of the heroes that actually led the charge and were kind of at the forefront of the raid and just the operation that they decided to do have decided to kind of hang up their capes and kind of call it quits. They feel like the negativity and just the outward disapproval towards heroes is getting too much. And we know that, these heroes are humans themselves, and it's starting to get to them. So we see that some of the heroes do understand, but you're starting to see just the human element of everything that's going on. And we see more of that element with Deku as the episode goes along. Like I mentioned in the other episode, it's ironic how All Might, we know he took it upon himself to be responsible for Deku and look after him. At this point, since All Might's kind of like a shell of what he was back in his day, Deku, with the reveal of all the other quirks in One For All, we know that he's eventually going to surpass All Might. It's something that he says himself. He's able to do what he can do at just half, but better. And just the overall experience with what he fought with Lady Nagant, it kind of just fast-tracked that. We see just how much of a problem Deku is now when he runs into another hired gun by All For One and takes care of him in an instant. We see here one of the scenes I love seeing this week, that Deku at this point can do and can use all his quirks to his advantage, is putting all his tools to use and is able to take care of situations as quick as possible. So we see that he's basically running around by himself, like we see in one of the other iconic scenes. I know the manga reader's been waiting to see. He's just running around, beating up on all the villains and just trying to make things back to normal as quick as possible. But we do see that it's starting to take a toll on Deku, and it's starting to concern some people. So it's ironic because Deku is concerned for All Might, and that's kind of why he wants him to stay away from him. You saw how, like, in the beginning of the episode, All For One makes him know that he'll try anything to make him suffer, and he feels like the people close to him are in danger. So they're worried about each other, but it's kind of making them hostile and resentful towards each other. So hopefully at some point they have a talk and start to understand each other, because they both just want the best for each other, but are going about it in different ways. During this episode, we do see a familiar face. We see Hero Killer Stain, who was kind of on the back of All Might. Now, we don't get to see what he does, but we do see him in the shadows. So hopefully next week, we'll get to see exactly what happens and why he's out and after All Might in the first place. So the episode does end in interesting fashion because, like I said, a lot of things are highlighted about just the overall emotion of heroes and how heroes are approaching their careers or their jobs, I would say. We know that Deku is the type that wants to take everything upon himself. The reveal of the quirks, the reveal of the rest of the quirks in One For All have highlighted these emotions, puts more pressure on them. Through certain events, we see that Deku runs into his class. We saw before that Deku had left a note to his classmates wanting to distance himself because of the threats All For One had issued to him. And so he felt, again, main theme of this episode, that he had to take it upon himself to take care of the threat and keep all his loved ones away from him. But something that I enjoyed from the beginning about Class 1A and the new generation of heroes is the fact that they don't feel like they have to do everything by themselves. A lot of times this class, these students have solved problems and have risen to the occasion as a team, which is what I enjoy about them the most. Some of them, of course, are stronger than others, have some quirks that are better offensively, but as a team, they always get things done. And I think that that's what this new generation is going to do better than the previous generation. Bakugo, interestingly, was nervous about Deku and All Might being together. And like I mentioned before, the fact that they felt like they had to achieve peace in the same fashion. But Class 1A knows that together they can achieve greater. And that's the message that they keep trying to stress to Deku. An exchange that I love seeing, because now these are two groups of people that are trying to drive their point across, are trying to make each other understand why they feel the way that they feel. So next week, we'll see just exactly what everyone has to say. I would love to know what you guys think about the episode, what you think about just what's going on in general, and if the class should even clash. See you guys next week.